Hi guys, welcome to another tutorial. In this tutorial, we will discuss regarding actions in Microsoft Dynamics 365. Actions, as you know, these are newly introduced processes in Dynamics, Dynamics CRM 2015. So here we will discuss what an action can do and what the other processes like workflows and dialogues can do. So let's say actions are nothing but the processes which can be configured for all entities to be run. As you know, workflows, when you configure workflows, you have to have to define the specific entity for that workflow. Unlike that, actions cannot be, you know, uh, actions can be configured for a specific entity, or we can define the action to run for any type of entity in runtime. Okay, so the first option we can first fundamental we can have here is we cannot run the action on demand by user. Like workflow, when you run a workflow, you can select the workflow and you can run it. But in case of actions, users cannot run it on demand. Rather, it can be called by our plugin code or our JavaScript code or through some parent workflow or parent dialog, whatever. But user cannot run it manually. It is always a process driven. And the next point is action support input and output arguments, but workflows doesn't support. I have already told you, in custom workflow activities, we have always some input arguments, and then after processing the after our processing, we can also return the output parameter, output arguments to on the process workflow process. Likewise, actions support input arguments and output arguments, which is like a custom workflow. And we can also configure for we cannot configure the scope, like in workflow we can define the scope, whether to run it against user scope or business unit scope or organization scope. But here, in case of actions, we cannot configure the scope. Also, we cannot configure the actions to run automatically. Rather, it should be a process driven by some plugin or workflow or dialog or JavaScript, whatever you want. And typically, you can say actions are messages or events. Okay, like create and delete. Likewise, actions can be a message, can considered as a message. So this is what the fundamental, but until unless we do a practical actions configuration, we cannot understand the requirement of these actions. Let's go to the Dynamics 365 and configure a action. And for that, go to the settings and solutions and open an existing solution if you have, or you can create a new solution for that. As I have created a solution already, that is first dialog solution. I will take this solution to configure my action. In this solution, you will find I have already created two processes. One is dialog and another is workflow in my last sessions. Okay, so these are two processes we have in this solution. One is dialog and another is workflow. Today I will discuss. I will create a action which is a process type. Now give a process name called as create email activity. So my requirement is like that whenever a user opens a customer record and runs a workflow to create an opportunity, the workflow will create an opportunity and calls this action to create a email activity. So the workflow itself doesn't create the activity, rather This action will create a email activity, and this action will be linked from that workflow. So this is what we are gonna create. Now select this category as action. Mind it here. This would be action, and the entity must not be specific to any entity, but again it is against the requirement. It is again aligned with the requirement. So if you want to select any entity, then you can go for it. But for the time being, I just want to specify non or global because I want to available this action to run from any entity I want. So select non as entity and select OK. Once you select OK, the Action Designer window will open. Unlike workflows, you cannot specify scope here. Rather, you can. The new option is available is enable rollback. If any problem happens here in action steps, then you can check this option to enable rollback. As I told you, these actions can be called in plugins, and plugins always runs in transactional fashion, and any exception occurs in plugin that rolls back the plugin. So likewise, we have an option here in action to enable rollback. If any error occurs here in the step of action, then we can also roll back the process. We can also, select the option if we want to keep log for workflow jobs that encounters error. If we get, if we check this, then the errors will remain in the system. Otherwise, this will be vanished from the system. Okay. So So as I've told you, these actions always require some input arguments and output arguments, but it is not mandatory. So for our requirement for the time being, we need two we need three arguments and input arguments and one output arguments. Okay. So select this first one and change this to uh, from email user, and the type select as lookup, or you can select as entity reference, and the entity will be contact. Okay. And it is required, select the required. If you don't want to send, if you want to make the input argument as optional, you should not check this. But as for my implementation, I need from email user address, user email, so I want to make it required, and it should be direction input, because the action will get this input argument from an existing workflow. So description, this is from email user. Likewise, and this to email user, and select entity reference, and it is also, and it should be user. Okay, should be user entity, and it is required, and it should be input argument, and give a user, give description like uh, the to email user. Sorry, we just want to make this from address as user entity, and this to email address as contact. And here the third argument will be the subject, of email. Then should not give space here, given subject, email subject, let's say. let's say string, and it is required, and it should be input subject. Third one is description. It will be text. It is required. Let's see description. And we will take another parameter which will be if email exists parameter, which will be of type boolean, and it is required, let's say email flag. I will make it as output. That means what this flag stands for, this action will check if the email, the two email address, the user to whom we just want to send an email has some email address. If there is email address, then the flag will select as yes. If there is no email address, then the flag will be selected as no, and this output parameter will be sent to the existing, the calling, workflow or calling process. Now I have fitted this. Now the next thing is we will create a state. Now save it to add a process here, add step, and we will find send email activity. So set properties. Here we will assign the input arguments to the corresponding fields of email activity. From should be, we should go to the look for arguments, and from the argument list, these are all the argument entities. You can select from user, and you can select as created by, or you can go here, select to, and select to user address, contact. These are all the values we are assigning from the arguments we have. In subject, we can assign here arguments email subject, and we can give the description here, email description. Okay, now save and close. Now another thing, we have just used the input arguments that are sent from parent workflow or process, but now we have to assign the if email exists boolean. Here I just want to add a check condition to check if email ID is present for the true address. Check if email address present for contact. Uh, Select this condition to configure. Here we can select to email user. You can select the primary email, its email contains data. If it contains data, then then add a step called as assign value. Here I just want to assign some value to if email exists output parameter. Assign flag and select set properties. Here you will find the label is assign flag and the name is if email exists, which is the output parameter, and the value will be true. If exists, then true. And 7 goes. Okay. Else the default action will be if the exist. No, we will delete this step for the time being, and we will go to the set properties again. We will select a default value for this output parameter as false. If the email ID exists, then it will set as yes. Otherwise, the default value will be false. Here, I can select the default value as false, but if the condition satisfies, then sorry, this is not the way I just want it to be true. 7 close. Okay. Now we have designed the action here. Now we can activate it so that it will be available to be used by other processes. Now close this. Now you can see here I have created the action here, but the primary entity is null because I have created that action to run from any entity. Now the next point is I just want to create a workflow to call that action. Parent workflow to perform action. Create opportunity and email. Select the category as workflow and the entity should be contact. Click OK. Here just change the scope as organization and uncheck all the starts when section, and we should run it as on demand, and we will add a step here to create an opportunity first. Create opportunity and select the record as opportunity. Set properties. So this is first step that the workflow will do. Select 500 tablet required for user. Give a full name from assistant here. Select this. So we have assigned the value of the topic, and we have to select the potential customer. So assign the contact as potential customer and 7 close. Now the next point is we will call the action that we have just created and pass some information to the action so that the action will create an email message. So this is the way perform action is the step by using which we can call some actions here. can select the action. The action name was create email activity. You can select this. Once you select this, the entity will be selected as known, and you can click set properties to pass the parameters. So these are the parameters from email user to email user, email subject and email description are the input parameters that the action require to execute. Now assign the values from email should be contact owner, and add assign this value, and same way select the address here, select the form assistant value here, email subject gave a value that opportunity created for 500 tablets, and email description gave something like thanks. So we have assigned all the input parameters, and we will save and activate it. Now I will go to now I have done creation of I have done the action and the parent workflow. Now we will go to the system to check it if it is working fine or not. Go to sales and go to contacts. So open this customer that we have created last time, and the owner is my name. It's showing Sanjay Prakash here. So open this. What is that? One second. Let the view load first. Go to settings and shells, then contact. Once you press contact, the contact in records will be shown here, and let's filter the active contact by the owner, and I want to select the record which is owned by me. Let's say do a filter and contains filter by specific owner. So this is the user I want to filter. Just select this and add. So you will find two records. One is this and another is John Deep. So open this customer and we will run the workflow against this customer. Now if you go to here, more command record, and run the workflow here, we'll find the parent workflow that we have just created and click add to run it. Now it is running in background. Now go to the settings area to check if the system job is running fine or not. Go to system job and select the entity. So this is the system job